All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm making my final Wrath video, I think, or this should be about my final Wrath video. Let's find the stuff we're going to be talking about here today. And basically what I've been doing for quite some time, and I wanted to test it once I got up to level 80 and blah, 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 is exactly what are our options as paladins and as shamans for the purposes of like our gem slots and our enchants, and whether or not we go resistance, resilience, or like some mix of the two, or all in on the damage. Like, what do the actual numbers look like? And the first thing I'll observe, or if you just want the, like, too long didn't watch, too long didn't listen version, basically, if you're a class that comes built in with some kind of spell resistance, such as Paladin or Shaman specifically, but also potentially Druid, and then the other class like maybe Priest, spell resistance is definitely something for you to consider. And not just consider, it might actually be mathematically superior for you to consider spell resistance over, say, just pure resilience, or even DPS and nothing else. So, I'll give you an example here. So there's basically... Oh, let's just talk numbers. Okay, keep it simple first. Alright, so basically every 6.5 resist it equals 1% damage reduction. But it also has the added benefit of a 1% chance to resist any spell effect that basically doesn't do damage but will like CC the crap out of you or something like that. So we're talking like Cyclone, poisons from a druid. We're talking Hex. We're talking Strangulate, I think, is a shadow-based spell, so 1% chance to resist that per 6.5 resistances. There's some other weird stuff. Cyclone was interesting to find. Even a Death Knight's spell interrupt is magic damage. Okay, that's the other one. Wind Shear is a nature damage, a nature resistance check. So, 1% chance to resist Wind Shear every 1 point of spell damage you have. And then, of course, there's Cleansing of, what's the other one? Unstable Affliction. Some spells have do a double resist check. So Unstable Affliction, for example, when you cleanse the damn thing, if you fully resist the damage, you automatically resist the silence. But if you don't fully resist the damage, there's still a separate did you get silenced or not check, which will be the full resist check. So, for example, if you had a 30% spell damage reduction against Shadow, therefore you have a 30% resist chance. Against a double resist like that, it would be closer to like a 40% chance to resist the silence, because it's essentially double dipping. All right, moving on. And then, of course, you compare that to resilience, which is like 47 resilience is equal to 1% damage reduction. But it also has those added benefits of completely screwing over critical strike and then the critical strike stat. However, I would point out that just about everybody and their dog, like if you look at, like, how do I put this? Because resilience screws over critical strike so much, critical strike is almost never prioritized as a main stat on any of the DPS classes. If you want a rough breakdown of resilience, the way resilience tends to work is, especially for spellcasters, let's say the spells coming your way only have a 50% damage bonus. They don't have that 100% damage bonus. If your opponent has like 25% resilience, that 50% damage bonus is actually only a 20% damage bonus. If the spells or the attacks coming your way have a 100% damage bonus, and they're going up against something with a 25% resilience, that spell bonus damage is only 60% as opposed to 100%. On top, and this is without even factoring in that it reduces percent critical strike damage, blah, blah, blah. That is without factoring in it reduces the chance to crit. We're factoring in reduction. Because basically what resilience does is it just, the stat completely screws over critical strike. Because it's saying, oh, you're critting less. And oh, by the way, you're doing less damage to me in general, even if you do crit. And oh, by the way, if you do crit, you're you're taking less damage on top of more less damage on top of reduced chance to critical strike me. It's just bad. But that in mind, it's important to know that even though resilience really screws over critical strike, because of this, nobody's really stacking critical strike. So keep that in mind. As we begin to, it's important to keep in mind as we begin sacrificing resilience in exchange for resistances, to note that there's not really a class out there that's all in on critical strike. So, yeah, moving on. Okay, so what are our general options? Well, the options here are option one is like all, we're specifically talking about paladins in this video right now, although everything really applies to shaman as well, and I'll talk about shaman at the end. But basically it's looking like if you're a preg paladin, like if you're planning on playing preg paladin, going an all resist build is probably your best bet. If you are planning on playing a retribution paladin, which is different from a preg paladin, going all in on a single resist type, specifically shadow damage, is probably your best gearing option. Just from a pure mathematical perspective, is probably your best gearing option. And then if you are if you're an enhancement shaman, for example, you're basically best off pretending you're a preg paladin and going all in on the resistances as well. But let's just examine this so I'm not talking out my butt here, okay? Or so that you know I'm not talking out my butt. So we have option one. Option one for paladins is to put nothing but strength gems in every single slot and then take offensive enchants. And what you'll end up having is about a 14% increase in your DPS and about a 22% resilience, okay? And that's it. That's all you got going on. Don't really have anything else happening for you. Shamans don't actually have this option because the way our attack power works. For example, Paladins gain 2 attack power per point of strength, and of course they're double dipping. They gain like 30% of that also as spell power, whereas Shamans only gain a single point of agility. My bad, attack power per point of agility and per point of strength. So this really isn't an option for us. We don't have like a pure offensive gem slotting option other than like armor pen or a few other options. Armor pen's also not such a bad option for pure gem slots. The problem with that is it's very circumstantial, if that makes any sense. You also need gear to support it, so your resilience goes down even more. Definitely worth looking into. Paladins have the vast majority of paladin DPS is physical damage. Even though it's telling us it's holy damage all over the place, it's actually basically just physical damage because it's subject to armor. I think only our judgment damage is not subject to armor. I could be wrong about that. I think even SOR is subject to armor. The hell was I getting at here? Armor pen. Right, and the problem with armor pen on Paladin is you have both Preg and Ret Paladin have the 50% damage reductions. I think it's Sanctified Wrath from your Avenging Wrath that's available for you every 2 minutes. Right? So it's like, why the hell am I getting armor pen just to double dip when I have wings up? As a Ret Paladin, when I'm wingsing, I'm looking to kill you, and when I'm not wingsing, I'm just looking to kind of grind you down a bit, or wait for my wings again, worst case scenario. So I don't know, maybe armor pen's not that big of a deal on Paladins because wings is so effective. Basically, you already have it built in. Alright, moving on. Of course, it's circumstantial too. Heavily armored targets, the armor pen's very useful. Lightly armored targets, the armor pen is kind of meh. Okay, but then you start comparing it to other things where it's like, okay, what if we do like strength resilience and we try to activate the socket bonuses? You go down to like 10% DPS and like 25% resilience. This is probably what most Ret Paladins will run in general who don't know any better. Then you have your resilience slash strength gen option where you're going more on resilience. This is the other thing that rep paladins are probably most likely to run if they don't know better. Again, you got that increase in resilience, but you got a decrease in DPS. Both are perfectly fine. They're about the same flavor of the same damn thing. Then you've got nothing but resilience gems, which is an interesting option. That gets you up to around about 32% resilience. Not such a good option for paladins. It's kind of weird because you're sacrificing activation of a bunch of your socket bonuses. However, that 32% resilience is also factoring in you have a PvP trinket, which, 9 times out of 10, most of you, which is perfectly fine for like a Blood Elf Paladin, but if you're a human Paladin, also fine for a Dwarf Paladin, but if you're a human Paladin, you're like, why the heck? It's more like a 30% resilience because you don't actually have the PvP trinket. It's like 30.5 or something like that. All right. Then we get into the resistance builds, which are probably mathematically superior. So there's really only two of note here, and that is the basically you have two options as a paladin, and that is either you go you focus on a single resist that you don't like that you have an aura for, or you just say to hell with it, I'm going to be virtually magic immune to everything except you go all in on the resist basically. So the all in on the resist basically ends up with something stupid like these numbers in red here, where you end up with like you end up with a 0% increase in DPS. You do get all your socket bonuses because all the resist all is a prismatic gem. So you don't have any increase in DPS as a paladin. You have a 24% resilience. This is the same for the shaman basically. But then your magic damage reduction, especially when you factor in your 24% resilience plus your magic damage, and then you factor in that you have some specific resists on top of that, it's actually this number in red up here. So you end up taking 24% reduced physical damage on top of any block you have, on top of your plate armor, on top of your plate armor with shield. So whatever that number comes out with, and then your talent points and whatever you got going on with that. Pretty big damn number since you are a heavy plate armor wearer. So 24% resilience plus all your natural physical damage reduction. But then against magic damage attacks, you're taking 36% reduced damage from anything you don't have an aura for. But then against something specific like shadow damage, and I would, oh my goodness, I didn't spell shadow right there at all, did I? Shadow, okay, adorable. You're taking a minus 48% damage from something specific you don't like, so that'd be either fire, frost, or shadow as a paladin. Highly suggest you pick shadow over anything else, which is actually kind of terrifying. You compare that to, say, the other option, which was nothing but resilience gems. This option, you have all your socket bonuses, whereas the other one you didn't. This only gave you a 32% physical damage reduction. It's a superior physical damage reduction, obviously, but you're a plate wearer, so what the hell do you care? Also, anything that does physical damage is usually toe-to-toe with you in melee as a paladin, which is kind of like things that are in melee with you as a paladin make you happy. And they make you happy in a lot of ways. A lot of ways in the sense that you're really good in melee, you can beat most other enemy classes who want to go toe-to-toe with you, and you're healing yourself at the same time, which is just all kinds of awesome. What you really hate is dealing with enemy spellcasters because they do not let you get into melee where you can both beat the crap out of them and heal at the same time. So that's kind of where the magic damage is better. So that's option one. My point is, from a purely defensive perspective, like if you're a defensively minded enchanter and gem slaughter and gear wearer, that kind of a thing, this all resistance gem build is objectively superior for a paladin than any of the other defensive options. Just because you're already wearing plate, what the hell do you need massive physical damage reduction for? If you really need the physical damage reduction, you can always go sword and board. It increases your healing. It increases you become like a half-ass preg paladin at that point, at the snap of your fingers, and you have massive amounts of damage reduction, spell damage reduction. It's important to note that of all the melee damage dealers, I think only one of them pretty much doesn't do any spell damage whatsoever. So like take Kitty Cat Druid, right? Like a good Kitty Cat Druid is going to want to have like Moonfire on you, and then he's going to be in melee with you on and off, kind of a thing. But they're usually going to have Moonfire on you, which you have a damage reduction for. They'll try to Cyclone you from time to time. Good Kitty Cat Druids, they Cyclone you so they can heal themselves. You have a pretty damn good resistance chance against that. Not great. Well, usually Kitty Cat Druids don't bring to the party any spell pen. One sec, I can check that out real fast. So if a Kitty Cat didn't bring any spell resistance to the party, what is that? You got 96 resist all divided by 6.5. I think it's still only like 15, 16%. Yeah. Okay, so maybe your resist chance isn't all that great. Okay, so Kitty Cat Druid's not doing a lot of spell damage. Warriors doing almost no spell damage. But the important thing to note here is that rogues really kind of like doing they like having their poisons on you, which you have an increased chance to resist by like 15% because they don't bring any spell pen to the party. Druids, when they want to Cyclone you who didn't bring any spell pen, like the Kitty Cat Druid, you still have a 15% resist chance. Not negligible. Because basically, if you resist the Cyclone, like let's think about this on you're fighting a really good Kitty Cat Druid, right? They're gonna fight you until they're almost gonna die. Then they're gonna run away, and they're going to get that critical Cyclone off on you, so they can heal themselves and not die. Well, if you resist that Cyclone, guess what the hell happens? You get on top of them, and they die horribly. So it's just like an automatic win. I think you still have your base 5% resist chance left over from Classic, so it's not a 15% chance, it's more like a 20% chance. So every time they do that, I disengage, Cyclone, and heal up thing, there's a 20% chance that the Cyclone whiffs, and they just die horrifically because of it. Smarter Druids will adjust their playstyle, but they have no way of knowing that you're a resist Paladin over a non-resist Paladin. And of course, you have the literally I cannot die, I'm going to win this fight every time against Shadow. Oh, right. Let's talk about the other melee classes. Okay, so for DK, if it's a Frost DK, their Frost Strike, which is the thing that their burst, basically. Basically what a Frost DK does is they build up lots of runic power, and they turn their runic power into frost strikes, and they just do horrifying amounts of DPS when they have a full runic power bar. However, those frost strikes, as the name implies, do frost damage, and DKs tend to not bring any spell pen to the party, so we can very quickly start to see what that does. So basically, you have 96% resist all. Let's say you're a Preg Paladin or you're a Ret Paladin that went the full resist route. What that basically means is you're going to have like 96 resist all, and then you're going to have your 130 aura resist. And on top of that, you're going to have a bunch of other specific resists, all in shadow resist. But let's just say we run into a Frost DK, even though we're built to fight a shadow primarily, right? All right, well, whatever. We're still... Ugh, my goodness. That would be 96 resist all plus our aura of 130 equals that. And then we'd have to minus... DKs are inclined to take I think it's 35 Cloak spell pen, but almost nothing else. So let's say they have Cloak spell pen. By the way, all these numbers that you have here for the resistances and the damage reductions assume the target has brought 130 magic resist. If the target didn't bring 130 magic resist to the party, which is what... Okay, so basically, in Arena, for PvP, it is suggested that For any class that is subject to Paladin aura resistance, so that would be Fire, Frost, and Shadow, they are advised by guides to bring 130 spell pen. Most of them don't bring 130 spell pen. They bring like 125 or 127, somewhere around there. They don't quite get to 130, but they're advised to bring 130 spell pen to the party. Nature damage users, so specifically we're talking boomkins and then shamans, are not advised to bring 130 spell pen to the party. They are advised to bring 85 spell pen to the party, specifically because the only sources of resistance that they have to worry about under arena conditions are a druid's Mark of the Wild, and then a shaman's 130 resist totem, which no shaman ever uses because it comes at the expense of like their 16% melee haste or their totem of wrath, or you name it here. So really the nature damage, basically it means that for Fire, Frost, and Shadow, assume the target has 130 spell pen. For nature damage users, assume they brought to the party 85 spell pen. All these numbers that you see here are assuming that people did bring the appropriate amount of spell pen. We're examining a DK right now who they don't get, I think they're told to bring like 85 spell pen, somewhere around there, but they never do. At best, they're like, I'm going to take the 35 spell pen on my cloak and call it good. That's basically how they roll. And how they roll, the reason for that is because their dots are not subject to nature resist. However, any other source of magic damage coming out of a DK is subject to resistances. And so they feel like they can get away with just 35 spell pen. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, but anyways, we're talking Frost DK here, right? Divide that by 6.5. It's like, cool, you have like a 30% damage reduction against the Frost DK's Frost-based damage attack. So Howling Blast, Frost Strike, whatever, right? Pretty terrifying. Pretty messed up. So we're talking about, what I'm trying to say here is why you don't need super high resilience. The answer is, okay, well, your magic resists are pretty much useless against a warrior. Your magic resists are semi-useless against a kitty cat druid. But then every other class you can think of, they're actually pretty damn useful. They're pretty damn useful even against a rogue, because it's much harder for the rogue to keep the nature, the poisons on you. When you do get hit with poison damage, which is their more consistent option, you actually have a damage reduction against that. Not insignificant. Then you get into something that's more ubiquitous, more common, such as Death Knights. And then you start realizing that, okay, well, if it's a Frost DK, I'm reducing their damage significantly with all this resistance stuff. If it's an Unholy Death Knight, things get very interesting because, okay, so yeah, so it gets interesting for a number of reasons. So number one, this is one of the reasons why I suggest going Shadow Resist on a Paladin. Pestilence is subject to resistances, and it's a binary. It doesn't do any damage. So it's either you fully resist Pestilence or you don't resist Pestilence at all. Death Knights have to Pestilence their target every 10 seconds, basically, in order to refresh the dots on the target once they get the dots on the target. For them to fail a Pestilence is really, really bad for their DPS, because it means they immediately have to Pestilence again, or their dots will fall off, and a lot of DKs aren't really paying attention because this is almost never a thing, because it almost never resists. If their dots do fall off, then it's really, really, really bad for their DPS, because it just really cucks their DPS really, really hard. Yeah, and the moral of the story is they don't bring any pen, so you end up it ends up being something stupid, like you brought like, I think it's 337 Shadow Resist. Like, this is what this minus 48% over here means. It means you brought to the party 337 Shadow Resist. DKs, at best, they bring like 35 spell pen, and then we divide that by 6.5 to actually see what we're looking at. And you can see that you've got like a 46% chance to resist Pestilence. Any kind of shadow damage they're doing to you, like Death Coil, like their, I think it's like narcotic strikes, that's 20% of their white attack damage is now done as shadow damage. Scourge Strike does a sizable percentage of it as shadow damage. All that shadow damage is reduced by 46% on top of your resilience of like 24%, which is basically like get the hell out of here. I can do that real fast. Times, we'll do 0.75 for the resilience. That's 25%. But I'm only doing 46% for the shadow. 46, what is that? That's 54. Yeah. Okay, congratulations. You have damn near a 60% damage reduction, all said and done, against any source of shadow resist damage coming out of that Unholy Death Knight, with the exception of Blood Plague. Yeah. The Blood Boil, not Blood Boil, Blood Plague. The shadow damage dealing dot. It'll do full damage to you. Just it'll be subject to resilience, but it won't be subject to any kind of magic damage reduction. Any other source of shadow damage get boned. And then, of course, we have to talk about their Gargoyle. Their Gargoyle does magic damage, and I'm not entirely sure it gets any kind of spell pen bonus from the Death Knight. So we're just going to ignore that. And then we have to realize that we have 96 nature resist. There's no negative to it whatsoever. No minus spell pen. No bonus aura to it or anything with this build, yada, yada, yada. We just divide that by a nice clean 6.5 to see the results. And you can see we're taking about 15% reduced damage from the Gargoyle. The point is that our resistances are not completely useless against Death Knights of just about all kinds. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, okay, so that's option number one. Option number one is we run around with something stupid like, I think it's, I forget, it's like a 15% reduced damage against all sources, and then magic damage against all sources, a 30% reduced damage from like shadow damage dealers, on top of a 24% resilience, but we don't actually have any real increase into our DPS. However, all of our sockets are active. This I suggest highly for Preg Paladin. Like this build screams Preg Paladin, even though it potentially also screams Ret Paladin as well. However, the Ret Paladins are probably better served by doing a mix and either going very heavy on the resilience because you're not usually sword and boarding, or to do a mix of like, you know, strength and resilience gems. But then what you do is basically the build is you say to hell with resist all. I'm going to focus super heavy on like shadow resist and shadow resist only. So now you're a Ret Paladin who has decided to gem normally, but you're all in on specific resists for shadow wherever they are applicable. And where they are applicable, you can find down here, which is leather workings, 70 resistance to bracers, helm 25, shoulder 20, and then you may or may not have resist all to cloak. I would highly suggest resist all to cloak. There's no better stat than 7 resist all to cloak if you're doing this, even though you're looking for specific resists. Then you have 16 specifically to gloves and chest, giving you a grand total of like 131 specific resistance. The reason why this is terrifying, let's go back over here. I need calculator. All right, so what does that end up doing? Well, you end up losing like, it's like 89 resist all in this build. However, you did pick up, wait a minute. Right, and then the build may or may not want the resist all ring. So there's this Onyxia ring, like phase 3 or something like that, that gives it gives really good stats. It's like shit tons of stamina, 100 like 800 armor, which is not which is pretty good, and then like 44 or 52 defense rating, and then it gives like 3 to all resistances. Stupidly good ring. I would highly suggest taking that. So let's just do the math here real fast. So you got like 70. This is your bracer resist, and then we're adding 25. Then we're adding 20 for shoulder enchant. Then we're adding 7 for cloak enchant because you definitely want to take that. Then we're adding another 16 from all these damn from glove armor kit and chest armor kit. There really isn't anything better to take. And then we do another 30 resist all because we took the ring. Then we have Aura, which is 130, right? So we're approaching 300 resistance on to a specific resist. However, let's say our opponent brought to the party, like it's a Shadow Priest or it's a Warlock, Affliction Warlock, or some other kind of Warlock, and they decided to bring to the party the appropriate amount of 130 Shadow Resist. It's actually less than that, believe it or not. I actually have to add 3. Yeah. Because they only bring like 127 according to the guides. 125, 127, something stupid like that. Then we divide that by 6.5 to give us our damage reduction. Congratulations, we're taking about a 26% reduced magic or shadow magic damage reduction in those matchups. But also we brought to the party somewhere in the vicinity of, this one's pretty sexy right here. I like this one, the option number 6, where you're prioritizing resilience, but then you're also doing strength gems where appropriate, and then you're doing resistance enchants. You're doing your best to activate all your socket bonuses. Option 8, I think, was also really good, but we can talk about that later. But let's just stick with this one. That way you end up having like a 5% increased DPS from all little strength stuff going on. You got a respectable 27% resilience, and then you still have, we're talking about our resistances right now. What was it, 26% damage reduction? Okay, cool. So I have a 27% resilience, but I'm also taking 26% reduced shadow damage specifically. And we'll just do the math on that real fast here. So times 0.73. Okay, so this is our resilience damage reduction. And then we also have to multiply that by, I think it's 7.3 would be 7.4, right? 0.74. So this is our 26% shadow damage reduction on top of our resilience, a 27% resilience damage reduction. Congratulations, you're taking 46, yeah, because I forgot to factor in the Onyxia ring into this math here. You can see I have this note up here. I'm like, if Onyxia ring is added, add this magic damage resistance, blah, 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 blah. So even though this says it takes, this is without the Onyxia ring, basically. Onyxia rings changes some things a little bit. So your resilience goes down, I think, just a tad bit, but your resistances and everything. It's kind of, it's a really stupid thing to try to calculate, because the Onyxia ring, yeah, your resistance got lowered, but you gained 800 armor and something like 55 defense rating or skill or some stupid thing like that. It's not a loss to resilience, so I just give up. I just like, 27% resilience, whatever. Moving on. Anyways, you end up with something stupid like a 46% shadow damage reduction. Do you think you're going to die as a rep paladin with a 5% versus shadow priests and warlocks when you have a 5% increase to your DPS and you're taking a whopping 46% shadow damage reduction from them? And that's if they brought to the party the appropriate amount of resilience. Spell penetration. The answer is no. No, 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 no. The other important thing to note is on the subject of spell pen. So you might say to yourself, okay, what's stopping people from stacking spell pen if resistances are so good? And the answer is Blizzard was pretty sparse on the sources of spell penetration that they gave to other classes. So, for example, the only real sources for spell pen gear in the entire game are gems, which are 20 spell pen per blue gem, I think it is. I could be wrong about that. Might be a red gem. But it's like 20 spell penetration per gem, and then the 30 spell pen to cloak, and then nothing else. And when I say nothing else, I mean nothing else. So, almost literally nothing else. I couldn't really find anything. I'm talking like PvE gear. So it's not really an option for casters to be like, oh, I'm fighting a guy who has resistances. Let me just switch over to this weapon that has a lot of spell pen, or let me switch over to this trinket that has a lot of spell pen, or let me switch over to this neck piece that has a lot of spell pen. They just can't do that. It's gem sockets or nothing. And in order to get that 125 spell pen that they need, they end up doing something like this. So they end up getting 35 to the cloak, and then like 4 gem sockets, and you can clearly see that. Yeah. And then like 1/2 gem socket. So basically, they're to get that 125 spell penetration, which is what most of them are running around with. What they basically had to do is they had to give up 4.5 gem sockets already to get that 130 spell pen. So in order to get even higher, they would have to add like another 5 gem sockets, so that they would have to be almost entirely gem spell pen at that point, and it's not even practical because they start losing the socket bonuses pretty quickly. So mathematically speaking, in order for a spellcaster to start overcoming a pure resist build, as far as gems and gear and enchants and all that stuff is concerned, an enemy spellcaster would have to dedicate virtually every gem socket within reason, meaning they're still trying to activate their socket bonuses in order to counter what you're doing over there, which greatly lowers their DPS anyways. So the moral of the story is, let's say a mage brought, 130 spell penetration to the party, and they went up against you, and you have like this 16% magic damage reduction. The mage has like a 10% increase in their DPS on top of, this is if they didn't go at resilience, like they're pure offensive. They have like 10% increase in DPS versus you, who have a minus 15% magic damage reduction on top of resilience. If they went pure spell pen, they would lose almost all of that 10% damage reduction or increased DPS in order to counter your minus 16% magic damage, which is highly worth it for them, specifically against you, what you're doing with your magic resists, but is completely fucking useless against everybody else, and especially like, warriors and you name the class here, right? Like insert class here, it's useless against. So no mage, no spellcaster in their right mind is going to go over the appropriate number of arena, the suggested amount of spell pen for arena, which again is 130 for any kind of paladin resistance, and then 85 for nature. All right, blah, 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 blah. Right, so Ret Paladin, your options basically are between 5, 6, and 7. If you're a psychopath, you can do 7. I mean, running around with 30% resilience, two offensive trinkets, and then, a single resistance of go F yourself levels, that would be pretty terrifying. It's not going to be a minus 45%. That number's wrong. It'll be closer to a minus 50% shadow damage reduction. I don't like that option. I mean, maybe high resilience Ret Paladin is a thing. I don't really like it mathematically because you're overkill already, right? Like at our 46% damage reduction, which is our option 6, we were already good to go against shadow damage dealers. Why the hell do I need like Giga Chad? It's overkill. Like we are overkill times overkill divided by overkill at that point. So I think your option is Ret Paladin is either number 6 or number 5. I think as a Preg Paladin, I'm not really sure what Preg Paladins struggle with or don't struggle with. I know Preg Paladins are even more Giga Chad against targets that want to melee with them than a Ret Paladin. So they really synergize well with the all resist build. Preg Paladin all resist build is probably a monster, just because you get to go up against just about any spellcaster and have a really good damage reduction against them, which means you have really good survivability against them, which means you're actually going to get into melee with them, and once you get into melee, you can start doing what Preg does best, which is just heal off of your melee attacks. Very, very good, solid build. Becomes even more terrifying if it's paired with anything like an enhancement shaman, or just a shaman in general, because shamans do terrible things. Okay, so I guess that's what the one thing we have to talk about in arena at the end when we get down to it. But basically, there's a comp for arena called Preg Enhance. So it's a Preg Paladin and an enhancement shaman, and the two of those go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're absolutely it's a terrifying combination. It's terrifying because you have 30% haste for both of you from, damn it, what is it? From Lust. You have a 20% haste in melee haste in a single totem, so for a grand total of like 50% increased haste for the team, which a Preg Paladin synergizes with spectacularly. The Preg Paladin brings Shadow Resist aura to the party, whereas the Enhancement Shaman brings plus 30 Fire, Frost, and Nature resistance to the party. Keep in mind that Nature Resist comes at the cost of your 20% melee haste totem. But, you know, if you're up against like a Boomkin or you're up against an Elemental Shaman, you might as well throw it down. The point is, Paladin plus Shaman gets plus 130 spell resistance to every single resistance simultaneously, with the exception of Arcane damage, which almost no class in the entire game does pure Arcane damage. That would be specifically Mage, and that spec is not a thing in Arena whatsoever. So those two classes together, Preg Paladin. So in other words, if you have a Preg Paladin with going the full resist build, and you have an Enhancement Shaman or even an Elemental Shaman going the full resist build, the two of those guys together are an absolute monster for most comps to deal with. It would have to be like 2 melee comps before their resistances are completely useless. The problem is you're still going up against a Preg Paladin and an Enhancement Shaman who are not entirely unhappy about a scenario where they're fighting one or more enemy melee users. So, for example, in 2s, one of the scariest things you can run up against is like Holy Paladin Arms Warrior, right? And you start thinking about that matchup, like Preg Enhance resistance builds versus their worst possible matchup, which is probably Arms Warrior and then H-Pally. And even under those circumstances, you've got some nasty tools at your disposal. You have Hex on the Shaman, which is a kill window if the two of you can survive long enough. Like you get the Paladin's Bubble, you get the Paladin's Trinket. Next thing you know, Hex is a kill window. You have Bop, which the opposing team cannot cleanse, so you can stop. It's basically a bubble for well, the Paladin has Bubble, and obviously they're going to try to kill the Shaman because the Shaman is the weak link of the group. He's the most susceptible to being damaged as far as melee is concerned because he's wearing mail and not plate. At best, he can go mail and shield as opposed to mail and plate if you're trying to dick around. He's the target to kill. And you have Bop for him, which is pretty cool. Meanwhile, on the other side, the other team doesn't have Bop for the Warrior because you have Purge. You can just purge it off of them. Also, you have Purge. The Holy Paladin, or the Preg Paladin, both Paladins have, I forget the name of it, it's like Shield of Light, or whatever the hell. It's a thing that, you know, every 6 seconds it triggers, and it gives X amount of HP. The Preg Paladin's Shield of Light, or whatever the hell it is not as powerful as the H-Pallies. The H-Pallies does about 3,600 bubble shield hit points every 6 seconds, whereas a Preg Paladin's does less, but not that much less. You'd be surprised. The Preg Paladin's does about 2,800 by comparison every 6 seconds. The difference is that the Shaman team has Purge, so you might as well just negate that right out the window, whereas the Preg Paladin, the Preg Enhanced team still has it available. And it's not a heal, so the Warrior still has to deal with that. It's kind of interesting. The other thing you got going for you with Preg Enhance, which is kind of fascinating, is the Preg Paladin has the ability to freedom and to remove stuns with freedom, and to freedom while stunned, right? So you get stunned, and you can still freedom yourself. You can use freedom to get yourself out of the stun. Likewise, Shamans have really big issues with stuns. They have no counter to stuns. They have no stun time reduction or anything like that going on. They just eat stuns alive. Stuns are really bad for Shamans, and you have a Paladin that can just be like, hey, I'm just going to freedom you out of the stun. The enhancement shaman also has freedom, believe it or not, but it's an even better freedom technically, because it's a freedom that can be killed, but it can't be purged. So the enhancement shaman can put down grounding totem where it pulses every 2 seconds, and it pulses immediately. It pulses one time immediately upon placing it on the ground, and then every 2 seconds after that it pulses. It's got something stupid like a 36-yard range pulse. I don't think it's that big. It's actually 20 yards plus 20%. So it's a 24-yard range pulse that every pulse removes slows and end snares and all that nasty crap off. And you can put down that totem every, like, I think it's like every 21 seconds or something like that. I forget. It might be less. It might be every 15 seconds. In other words, it's really hard to stop. You also got cleanse, right? Oh, and then it gets dumber because you also have grounding totem, and then grounding totem removes fears. It does not grounding totem, tremor totem. Tremor totem pulses when you put it down. It pulses every 2 seconds. It's got a massive aura of like 36 yards. And it removes fears, sleeps, and seduction, all things that paladins traditionally hate or weak against. So, in other words, between the two classes, there's almost nothing in the game that can stop you. The only thing that can stop you is Cyclone, Hex, and then Sheep, specifically on the Preg Paladin. So that, and that's about it. But you're still... because the shaman doesn't have anything. If you sheep the shaman, the paladin just cleanses it. If you sheep the paladin, the shaman's got nothing for it, basically. Kind of sad. But, the paladin still has PvP trinket, and he has bubble, so good luck sheeping him anytime soon. Especially since we're talking about there being at least one mage on the enemy team versus 2 guys who have resistances out their butt and hard counter enemy spellcasters. I mean, good luck. Like, good effing luck. Like, even if you just chain CC'd the Preg Paladin out of the fight, there's a really good chance that whatever comp you're dealing with just can't kill the Elemental Shaman because there's just too much resistance going on there. Like, a Spell Cleave just couldn't do it. I mean, you're still looking at like that 46, 47% spell damage reduction. Good luck. Good effing luck. Anyways, really fascinating comp. Oh, the other thing that, again, we're talking about the worst possible matchup, right? So we got Preg Enhance with the spell resist builds. They run into any comp with a spellcaster, they're probably going to win. Just off the back of that's what they do, is that they can just straight up ignore magic damage. And most hard CCs will also bounce off of them, which is kind of terrifying. If you run up against Holy Paladin Arms Warrior, which is the worst possible matchup for them, because again, if it was a DK, at least your resistances are going to do something, and it's definitely going to stop the enemy burst. But if it's an Arms Warrior, then it's a completely different story. One sec here. All right, cool. Arms Warrior, completely different. Right, so the other thing you got going on is Frozen Power. So Frozen Power basically makes a Shaman's Frost Shock, which he has available to him every 60 seconds. It snares for like 5 seconds. That doesn't sound too terrifying until you realize that it means that Preg Enhance is actually very capable of kiting an Arms Warrior. Especially, it's almost impossible for an Arms Warrior to effectively kill an Enhancement Shaman if the Enhancement Shaman is catching any kind of heals whatsoever from an outside source. Mortal Strike be damned. And the reason for this is because you can get yourself out of any slow, including Hamstring, right? Because your totems will pulse for you. You have freedom available for you from the other Paladin. The Preg Paladin, the Preg Paladin wants the Warrior to attack him, and the Warrior really doesn't want to attack the Preg Paladin. He wants to go after the Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman, again, he has two sources of removing fears. I mean, slows. So he's like full speed all the time, all day, every day. He's got almost constant slows on the warrior between a 6-second frost shock and earth binding totem, which will have to be killed in order to stop it from slowing. What else does he have got going on? Right, and then his wolves, which last 45 seconds. You can spirit walk, which that makes you basically you have another undispellable source of freedom for like 30 seconds over the course of 45 seconds. It's got a 32-second cooldown. Anyway, you summon your wolves. You can summon your wolves. You can activate a spirit walk, and it's basically an undispellable freedom for the next. It gets stupid for the next 15 seconds. Then you activate it again after 32 seconds if you need it. You have other stupid things going on, which mean you can instantly shift into Ghost Wolf form, which Ghost Wolf form reduces the effects of slows. So, for example, when I get hit, when a Frost DK, Chains of Ice, ices me, which basically roots you in place for all extents and purposes, right? If I Ghost Wolf form, I'm only slowed by like 25%. If I get Hamstring on me and I Ghost Wolf form, I'm again only slowed by like 20%. It's kind of ridiculous. And that's just an instant cast. So you can go into Wolf, you can go out of Wolf, and so forth and so on. So even if your Wolves are not available, even if no source of... if your Grounding Totem isn't available, if Freedom isn't available, you can just Ghost Wolf and literally just run away from a warrior as long as a warrior has like a 50% stun on it. Like I said, it's nigh impossible. There's a lot of kiting potential that the spec has against Holy and Arms Warrior. I'm not saying you're going to have an easy matchup against Holy Paladin Arms Warrior, but I'm pointing out that it's actually kind of a really hard matchup for the Arms Warrior and the H Paladin to secure a kill. And time is theoretically on your side as the Preg Enhance, because basically your kill target is the Warrior. Right, your kill target isn't the Paladin, even though you can easily switch over to the Paladin and kill the Paladin. But the Paladin's got Bubble, the Paladin's got PvP Trinket, and your comp doesn't really have any way to get them to activate PvP Trinket, right? Get them to activate PvP, yeah, because you don't have a lot of sources of stuns or the DPS or anything to really scare the Paladin into wanting to use his PvP Trinket or his Bubble. So it's like, yeah, you can probably force out Bubble by damaging him. You might be able to force out PvP Trinket by damaging the crap out of him and then stunning him at the last second. So, like, rather than bubbling, he'll PvP Trinket and then heal himself and get himself stabilized that way via other means, blah, 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 blah. But the moral of the story is you're still 2 DPS. Like, an enhancement shaman who has gone resistance build still has like 80% of the DPS of an enhancement shaman who went full like DPS. And the Preg Paladin, believe it or not, even when they go resistance build, they've still got somewhere in the vicinity of like 80% of a Ret's DPS. Except both classes have they're highly resistant against spell damage dealers. They do really good off healing. Like the best off healer in the entire game is a Preg Paladin. The second best off healer in the entire game is that's a good question. The second best off healer in the entire game. One second, let me pause. It's like doorbell. All right, so basically what I'm trying to say is that that's the wrong stuff. This is what we want. Preg Paladin is widely considered to be the best off healer in the game. And then it's debatable, but the second best off healer in the game is thought to be a Spellhance Shaman, which is what I suggest bringing to the party. However, one could argue that a Ret Paladin pretending to be a Preg Paladin is a better off healer, and possibly a Prop Paladin is a better off healer, and possibly one could argue that a pure Ret Paladin, like two-handed Ret Paladin, is an even better off healer than an Enhancement Shaman. What kind of pushes it over to the Enhancement Shaman being the better off healer, though, is it depends on all those other classes really depend on being able to melee stuff and being able to get crits. Whereas the Enhancement Shaman, whether he's meleeing stuff or not, he's still a solid healer. And the reason for that is because he still has shit tons of spell power. So if you don't know, an Enhancement Shaman's statistics, they come with something stupid like 3,000 spell power. They've got like 2,600. My bad. Yeah, 3,000 offensive spell power, 2,600 plus healing, and then 4,000 attack power or something stupid like that. And that's not me lowballing. They got like it's kind of ridiculous. I can actually show it here real fast potentially. Let's go here, just so we can see something different, right? And then the only better off healer in the entire game than a Preg Paladin is a Preg Paladin backed up by a Shaman, specifically an Enhancement Shaman, because at that point it becomes super hard to get the Preg Paladin physically off of you, and they bring to that party that 20 to 50% haste, which is kind of nuts. Da-da-da-da-da. I think this is it, right? Yeah. Yeah, so Preghant's pretty cool, especially with the resistance build. I think this is the guy. No, which one is it? Quickly now. Don't want to fight. Okay, cool. I think this is the guy. Yeah, this is the guy. All right, watch me put down the totems. Okay, see the stats? Got like 2,400 plus healing. This is without any totem down whatsoever. Almost 3,000 spell damage. 2,600 attack power. Where the hell is... I got the Onyxia ring here. 800 armor, 150 stamina, 30 all resistances, and then 55 defense rating. Pretty terrifying ring. What else do we got going on here? Stamina, intellect, haste rating. Had to do it. Didn't have a choice. This might get... What's my hit rating? Right. I don't know if the hit rating's low or high. Didn't I have to gem some hit rating? I tried to gem worthless gems, but then I was like, let's put some hit rating and some attack power in here. No enchants on this gear whatsoever, unless I was able to put it... unless it had an enchant. I can't remember. Yeah, shadow resist, stamina, agility. Yeah, because I needed to activate the sockets for testing. But I put the expertise here just because I wanted some very raw... Anyways, no real defense bonuses whatsoever. So put down the totems. You can see the spell damage goes up to 3,200, and the healing is like, 2,656 or something stupid like that. If I recall, the weapons have plus... Yeah, they got spell power on these things. This is with Flame Tongue active. This plus healing can go up even higher without it. Let's see what we can do. Do some healing waves. Yeah. In combat, you'd probably want to do lesser healing wave. Where is it? This is chain heal, isn't it? No, this is lesser heal. So you just, do some lesser healing waves, something like that. I think this build had... Yeah. So in theory, you're flame shocking stuff, and then you get the haste going. I talked about how this is the best trinket possible for Spellhand Shaman, and then I talked about the... I didn't talk about, but I was making a video, but I decided to not talk about it. How these two trinkets here are the best trinkets possible. One says, periodic damage from your Flame Shock spell grants you 44 haste rating for 30 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. You can see how that would be kind of terrifying. And the other one says, each time your Lava Lash ability, use your Lava Lash, you have a chance to gain 400 attack power for 18 seconds. So on Wowhead, it tells us that this thing has a 9-second internal cooldown, and it has a... something like an 80% chance to proc on Lava Lash, which, if true, is frickin' ridiculous and makes it one of the best trinkets possible. I came here on Warmane to confirm it, and I did in fact confirm that it has a 9-second internal CD, and it has an 80% chance to proc when you use it, so that's pretty terrifying. However, the fact that you can have haste, like this, like 220 haste at all times, practically is the clear winner for both offensive and defensive purposes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The reason why this is the best trinket by far, or trinkets that say things like this, where it basically says it says you gain a shard of flame each time you cause a non-periodic spell critical strike. Whenever you reach 3 shards, it will release, dealing like shit tons of damage. And then this thing has a cooldown of 2 seconds. Well, the reason why this thing is broken is because it procs off the critical strikes of your Flame Tongue. So you can see here, every time I crit with Flame Tongue, I get these little balls of flame up here. And since you're critting almost all the time, it's just a ridiculous source of damage. Basically, this trinket here on an Enhancement Shaman, might as well say it's worth like 300 DPS. It's kind of ridiculous. This thing over here, definitely good too, blah, 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 blah. But we came here to showcase why they're one of the best off healers in the entire game. And the answer is, it's because you've actually got shit tons of spell power. So your off heals, like if nobody's stopping you, this is what you're doing. Which is, these are basically flashes of light. For all extents and purposes, these are flashes of light. And you don't have an insignificant mana bar either. So what's the cast time of this stupid thing? This cast time on this thing is like 1.37 seconds. Now, I don't know why you would be lusting at the same time, but in theory, you could be lusting at the same time. So let's go find our heroism and see what it's at that point. It's like, oh no, heroism, and then it's like 1 second casts, just in case you need it, right? And then we just go, adorable. Yeah, so anyways, those are the stats of the Enhancement Shaman, basically, at the end of the day. Let's get that back up. So, I don't want to look at my haste right now. Haste rating, yeah, but then we have lust on top of that. I really don't want to know. Yeah, so we got a nice clean, 10% haste. Cool, spell haste. Our melee haste is something stupid, way higher than that. Well, it should be a totem around here somewhere. Yeah, it doesn't calculate the totem. That sucks. But you can see our melee attack is pretty ridiculous. Yeah, every time flurry procs, it's like less than a second for the melee attacks. You got that 4,000 attack power. Yep. It's just disgusting, and that's even without all the gems going on. Yada yada yada. This build, if you don't know, it's got. I did the math on it. It does between 3,000 and 3,300 HP, hit point damage DPS to a 40% armored target. It's got 1,500 healing per second. That's when in melee, when in combat, it's off healing, maelstrom healing capability. About 1,500 HPS. That's roughly the equivalent. Those stats are roughly equivalent of a Rep Paladin. Rep Paladins do about 3,000 DPS, and they have about 1,500 HPS per second. So virtually identical. And this, of course, is in the along with the pure resistance build. Defenses, you can see my resilience is, it says 23%, but it's actually 24%. I forget what also is increasing the resilience around here that I don't have, but it is what it is. I think it's this ring here. So it's like, yeah, it's telling me I have a damage reduction against all damage done by players, their pets, and minions. Oh, maybe I read that wrong. Yeah, maybe it's only a 22% damage reduction. But I forget where the extra sources are. It's hard to quantify this. How much damage reduction is an extra 800 armor worth, and then an extra 55 defense rating worth. So good defenses, increase your chance to block, dodge, and parry by an extra 0.4%, an extra critical strike damage bonus, all that stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not a 24% damage reduction. Maybe it's only 22% damage reduction. Oh, it's the trinkets. Right, derp. It's the trinkets. Right. Because one of these trinkets you're not allowed to have. So you get the heroic, and then you get the other one, and then your resilience goes up. Yeah, it provides an additional 24.25% damage reduction against all damage taken, blah, 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 blah. So that's where you get the 25%. 24% is the Yeah, and then of course you have whatever this ring gives you. So it's probably closer to like 25% damage reduction. Anyways, Rep Paladin looks remarkably similar to this. Very similar stats, very similar everything, very similar HP totals, you know, close to 2,600, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, done with that. Okay, so I'm probably done with this video. The big takeaways from everything is that for Paladins, for Preg Paladin, for Ret Paladin, okay, the big takeaways. As an enhancement shaman, you're best off in the peer resistance build. Like, I'm being dead serious. Take the peer resistance build. For Preg Paladin, also take the peer resistance build. For Ret Paladin, you have options. You can take the specific resist build, or you can take the resist all build. The resist all build it's perfectly serviceable. You'll have to decide which one you prefer as a Ret Paladin. I don't have a lot of experience as playing Ret Paladin. But it's really cheap to get the resist all build. I mean, the only difference between the resist all build and the specific resist build is the stupidly cheap 4 resist all prismatic gems, whether you have those in or not, and then whether or not you have your shoulder enchant is the expensive. No, I take it back. Whether your shoulder resist enchant is the cheap 7 resist all enchant, or it's the equally cheap 20 resist all enchant. So in other words, I would start with the resist all build, see if you like it or see if you don't like it, swap out to the non-resist, and then from there you can tell whether you're okay with the specific resist or you want to stay as the resist all. If you're paired with a enhancement shaman for whatever reason, or any shaman for whatever reason, then you might want to look into going the resist all build, because I mean, they bring those all those resist totems to the party. We can actually showcase that real fast here. Back, quit. Actually get on actual classic World of Warcraft here real quick. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, no, we can just end the video here. It's fine. The other thing to note is, of course, if you haven't watched my previous resist video, is that resistances in Wrath of the Lich King are more valuable. Like the changes from like TBC and classic World of Warcraft, right? So a resist point in Wrath of the Lich King is worth 2/3 more than a resist point was worth in classic World of Warcraft and in Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, in TBC. Meaning that 2/3 more, let me think about that. Meaning 300 TBC resistance. No. It would be 400. What? Yeah, whatever. It's worth 2/3 more. On top of that, resistances are far more consistent in their effect. So, for example, before in Classic and in TBC, you only had, when you got hit with a damaging spell, there were only 5 there were only 5 things that happened. You'd either get a 0 resist, a 25% reduction, a 50, a 75, or a 100% reduction, a full resist. Those were the only options. In Wrath of the Lich King, there are 11 options. It does it in series of 10 now. So either there's a 0% or a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100% resist. So those are your 11 options. And the damage dispersion, let's actually pull that up real fast here. I think I want to go paint. I think I want to go search. Go to hell. Or do I just go here? I might not have the chart anymore. I might have search resist. Resist compare PNG? No. Wrath resists compare? Yeah, here we are. Okay, cool. So I did a previous video on resists where I showed something like this, but it didn't come up very well. Where basically what I did was, this was level 70. I tested 102 fire resistance at level 70, and I tested it on like the Wrath PTR, and then I tested it on active TVC. And you can see that with 102 fire resistance, being attacked by mobs. I had like like fire elementals. I had a 24% damage reduction, and then flash over to the PTR server. It was actually a 40% damage reduction, and that's how I calculated that. It's the value of a resist has increased by 2/3. I double checked this whether or not it was the case at level 80 in classic world in actual Wrath of the Lich King, and it turned out to be the case. And that's basically where it's like 130 resistance is equal to a 20% damage reduction, and that calculates out to 6.5. Resistance equals a 1% damage reduction. But here's the thing I want you to observe is the damage dispersion. So these rows here are basically 10 resistance checks. So, and then all of this put together is like 100 resistances. Basically, I got punched in the dick 100 times, and then I did the math on, okay, how much am I resisting? So the first batch of 10, you can see I got 5 and 30%, 4 and 40%, and 1 and 50%, and nothing else in between. The next one, I got 120%, but then everything was either, somewhere plus or minus 10% from the 40, blah, 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 blah. And here's the total out here. So as you can see, out of getting punched in the dick 100 times in Wrath of the Lich King, I didn't see any 0%. I didn't see any 10%. Less than 10% of the time, I was seeing a 20%. I had like 4, which is 100% resists out of the total. But then I had everything was a very tight dispersion around this 40%, meaning it's very consistent damage reduction you get in Wrath of the Lich King. Whereas you compare it to like the classic resist scenario, whether you have it could be an equally tight dispersion. It's just that there's only 5 options, and so you could see that there were times when almost everything that hit me, I didn't get any resistances whatsoever. But there was a lot of there's potentially a lot of back-to-back 0% resists in that scenario. But Wrath of the Lich King, completely different animal. The resist value has been increased substantially for its damage reduction, and its consistency of how much you're getting resisted is super consistent in Wrath of the Lich King. We might actually be able to showcase that. You can go test it yourself if you want, or you can just sit here for let me pause the video real fast here, and I'll actually show you it in actual Wrath. Alright, cool. Right, so this is my Shaman on the active server currently, or active Wrath, I guess you could say. I've got 62 resist all. Missing the other for enchants and everything. Everything's fine. Yeah. What am I missing? That's not what we want. So what I'm actually missing is like 2 sockets in the PvP weapons. Although I'm using different weapons. Meaning one of my weapons won't have a socket. I guess I can talk about that. Guess I have to showcase that, and we'll bring that up later. But in theory, I would have like an extra socket here, an extra socket there, so plus 8 resist all. And then you'd have your resist all, 30 resist all ring. So you'd have about 100 all resistances in this build. Goes up more if you drink the lesser flask of resistance. Increase your resistance to all school to magic by 50 for 1 hour. Counts as both battle and guardian elixir. Persists through death. Not much to see there. We're actually looking for a normal fire elemental. Dude, you just killed everything. What's wrong with you? Go. Like, I'm going to fly over here, and there's going to be air elementals, aren't there? Are you ridiculous? You got to kill all the air elementals, dude. Okay, on my server, killing these guys is more valuable than killing the fire guys. So, whatever the hell this is, I don't know. But we're going to wait here until we find one, get one locked to us. I'm starting to suspect he's a bot. Let's see how bad of a bot this is. Come on, you can do it. Let's turn that off then. Let's get my resistance stuff going. There's one. Okay, cool. I want to lock this thing real fast. Boom, cool. Locked to us? Yeah, 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 yeah. Turn that off so it doesn't kill us. Alright, so this is with my, like, limp dick 62 fire resist. Let's actually put down the totems. So now you can see I have like 192 fire resist. Pull the combat log up here real quick. And you're going to see just how consistent this is. Like, I can actually play a game called Find Me. That's not very helpful, is it? There we go. You can play a game like Find Me the Low Resist. That 95 was the lowest resist we've seen so far. We got a 91. That's cool. What is 91 exactly? That's like a 20% resist, I think. Because these are supposed to be hitting for like 500, I think. Yeah, about a little over 500 is what they're hitting for. So even the lowest resist is like a 20% reduction. Ooh, it got some 88s, but he rolled low. Like, it's so hard to do. Like, yeah, whatever. Anyways, the moral of the story is super consistent. Very interesting damage spread on the thing. Good stuff. All right, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was what weapon I'm using on the Shaman. Just in case you're here specifically for Shaman and you're not here for Paladin for some weird reason. But if you're planning on playing Preg Hance or even Ret Hance, like the Resistance style, it starts becoming a little important to know what offhand is best on a Shaman. And it's not an offhand that is has a socket, which is why Shamans have 96 resist all, whereas the Paladins will have between 96 and 100 resist all in their gear. Let's get out of here. Boom. Okay, cool. Go over to my renamed Pally time. Having a cooling issue? What's going on there, buddy? Doo-doo-doo. Sweet. So I'm going to show you this, just in case you don't believe me. I still have my Hikari Manslayer from Classic World of Warcraft. And Hikari Manslayer still has its 100% spell power ratio, 5% proc chance. This makes it the best offhand, one-handed weapon for a spell paladin, not a spell paladin, for an enhancement shaman or a spell enhanced shaman possible. And we're going to showcase that right now. Hopefully it procs pretty quickly. I have no way of actually speeding this damn thing up. But you can see here that I have 624 spell power, which means when this thing procs, it is going to proc for 675 roundabout healing and damage. Healing is based upon the damage that it does. It is shadow-based damage. We're going to sit here and wait for it. Combat log. Keep hitting it. Come on, you can do it. My actions, right. So it's called Drain when it procs. It takes a million years to procs because I'm unlucky as hell. But the reason why this is the best offhanded weapon for a spell power or a spell enhanced shaman is because offhand weapons do half damage anyways, which is why even normal physical damage dealing enhanced shamans, they chant their offhand with Flame Tongue, because otherwise your Wind Fury procs are only doing like half damage. There it is, 675 damage and healing. Scroll up here real fast. Drain life. Yeah, did 675 damage and healing. Oh, maybe I should go test. I don't know how I would do that. I guess I gotta ride outside and then fall off and take hit point damage just to confirm that it's actually healing for that much. I could turn on the combat. Oh yeah, we could do that. Interface. Combat. I always have it on. Oh, you motherfucker. Okay, what does it say here? Lifesteal, shadow, healing, 20. Yeah, I guess I gotta go physically fall a bit. Anyways, what I was trying to say was, yeah, you do half physical damage on your offhand, but all spell damage is not halved whatsoever. So, Hikari Manslayer with your like 300 spell damage, or 3,000 spell damage, might as well be saying things like, that's a good chunk of damage, might as well be saying things like, I'm going to get a little bit more damage just to make sure. Hopefully we don't die from this. Yeah, that's adorable. What about this? Boom. Okay, cool. Plenty of damage. So yeah, so as an enhancement shaman, if you have like 3,000 spell power, your options for an offhanded weapon are basically something that says like 240 physical damage, which is cut in half, and then a bunch of stats, right? So it's like 120 physical damage. Whereas Manslayer, which you can still get out of ZG, it does like 50 DPS. So he says like 25 DPS, right? Physical DPS for being an offhander. But then it also does something stupid, like even at 2-second swing speed, it does something stupid, like 150 damage and healing DPS because of its proc, because it's swinging like once every second on an enhancement shaman. So you do the math. What do you think is better? Your offhand weapon that says it does 120 physical damage, or the other one that says it does 120? My bad. It says it does 25 physical. Better start this rodeo. It says it does. What the fuck are you doing to me? All right, whatever. Oh, the proc went. Cool. Lifesteal. Let's see here. Where is it? It should be down here, and I scroll up a little bit, right? Life drain hits target dummy for 600 and something overkill. But I think I healed for like 800. Right, I think I have talents that increase the amount I heal on a paladin. Whatever, we're just going to look at that again. It should be recorded, so I guess I can just do it again. But yeah, so 120 physical damage on your offhand plus stats, right? So that changes it a bit. Maybe the stats are good. And then the other option, which is 25 physical DPS, but then you do another 150 spell damage and healing. Sometimes, like not consistently. Which is kind of also a bonus in my opinion, because it sometimes it'll never proc, but then other times it is proccing like crazy, and suddenly your offhand DPS spikes considerably. Don't make me go watch the video. Boom. Did it not heal me? What the fuck? Oh. I know why it's not healing. Okay. It's not healing because it's a target dummy. Healing is based upon the actual amount of damage done. All right. All right, game. Okay. All right, fine. And you can tell this because sometimes it'll proc on targets that have non-existent amounts of life. And it'll do all the damage, but it'll only heal you for... It's lifesteal. If the target doesn't have any life, it can't lifesteal. So, you do the math. Where did you go? Jack-o'-lantern. Go away. Alright, let's try this again. Try this again. Ugh, I don't want to look at that. It's disgusting. You'd think these are things that I would have mathed or... figured out ahead of time, and I could just tell you, believe me, but no believe. Kill targets. Meow. Want to see the heal. Want to see the heal. Holy shit, I do no damage. Oh, it's because I'm spell power. Forget. And I got nothing up, so this ought to be interesting. That's lifesteal enchant procs, or those 21s popping up. We're actually going to have to heal myself here. How sad and pathetic is that? Alright, come on. Block, parry, block. Yeah, whatever. Do it. Do it. I swear. Let's get this going. Just because the moment this happens, I want him to die. Come on. Come on. Look at all this parry crap, man. Yep, that's just how it goes. This is a 100% Holy Paladin spec build thing got going on here, so if you're wondering why the melee sucks horrifyingly, and I can't hit anything. Boom, there it goes. Okay, 712. Die. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay, let's see here. Life drain, 712 shadow damage. Drain life heals for 712. Yeah, bingo. So it's 1-to-1 spell power, damage, and healing. This also means that it was not affected by any of the plus healing talents. Do I even have plus healing talents in this? Don't think I do. These are your active talents. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I have no idea if it would be affected by talents that increase the amount of healing you do on your paladin. I'm not really interested in testing that because I'm not. It's not a good main hand weapon because the main hand weapons are worth like 700 spell power, right? Let's get the hell out of here. Boom. They're worth 700 spell power, so it's just not worth it to. I don't think it's worth it as a main hand weapon, even on like spell power paladin, because you go from like having 3,200 plus healing and spell power all the way down like minus 700, right? And it's just not worth it. But as an offhand weapon for your enhancement shaman, I mean, hell yeah, Hakari Manslayer is mathematically superior to any other offhand that you can possibly put on your enhancement shaman because there is no spell power offhand weapon whatsoever in the entire game, and this is the closest thing you can get to it just because of how its proc and stuff works. Moral of the story is, yeah, it's just good. But anyways, I'm ending the video here, and Deus Vult, boys. Yeah, all resistance, preg enhance. All resist Ret Paladin and Enhanced Shaman, probably a couple of monsters there. Not sure what I think about 2 Ret Paladins or 2 Preg Paladins that are the spell power or spell resist version. Maybe that'll be decent. Ret Preg, don't know. The issue is that Enhancement Shaman and any kind of Ret Paladin or Preg Paladin just synergize way too well for it to be ignored. Anyways, I'm in the video here, and Deus Vult.